Hello, my name is Janice Bartley. I am a Black woman with a disability who uses a power wheelchair, proudly wearing a Black Lives Matter shirt and fabulous hair. I will speak to you today using both my natural voice and voice to text. I have been involved in self-advocacy and speaking up for yourself and others for a long time.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Bartlett. I'm a 50-year-old white woman with short brown hair. I'm wearing a green t-shirt, green V-neck t-shirt, and have cerebral palsy.
Hello, my name is Michael Carbonaro. I am 25 years old. I am an openly gay man with a disability. I have very short, I'm an exceptionally handsome young man with short hair, a green Calvin Klein t-shirt and basketball shorts, and a coral wall in my background.
I am Bernard Carabella. I'm from New York City. I'm the guy with black t-shirt, the good-looking guy. I'm an advocate for myself and other people. I've been doing it since the day I came into the world. I looked at an institute called Wilbur for 18 years in my life. It was one of the horrible places I ever lived in my life. There were over 6,000 people in the institution, and it was understaffed, overcrowded. People were being treated like animals instead of human beings. It was horrible. As you can see, I survived all of that and became the spokesperson for people with developmental disability. Yeah, excuse me. Look it up.
Self-advocacy means speaking up for yourself and others. Your voice is important to lend self-advocacy. I began to find my voice when I became involved with a networking project for women and girls with disabilities. I met strong people with disabilities that lived on their own, had jobs, kids, and were married or in relationships. I thought, if they could do it, why can't I? I became a self-advocate and I learned a lot about myself, how to be strong, how to speak up, how to not take no for an answer, how to believe in myself, and how to have confidence in my own voice. Most importantly, I realized that my life was my own. My happiness was in my hands. I really blossomed. I used to shy away from talking with people because of my speech impairment, but now you can't shut me up.
To me, self-advocacy means, particularly as a disabled person, I would say that that term relates mostly to disabled people rather than other communities, because disabled people really have to advocate to have a space in the world and to be able to do the things that typical people do. They really have to, even simple things, like going to the grocery store, not having 3 steps up, or the simplest things. And as a disabled person, you're sort of forced times into this role where you have to really speak up for yourself.
Self-advocacy means to me standing up for others, and more importantly, standing up for yourself, especially standing up for those who are most needed and for those who don't have a voice.
Self-advocacy is just a word. It means advocating for yourself, fighting for yourself, fighting for other people who don't have a voice. I've been doing this for over 50 years of my life. I guess I'll be doing this until I go to my grave, because I so strong believe everybody should be treated equally.
These past few months have been very scary and emotional. Besides dealing with the coronavirus, I am saddened to hear about another senseless killing of a Black person by the police. The death of George Floyd hit everyone like a ton of bricks. When my fiancé Sean and I listened to the details of how he died repeatedly on the news, and was heartbreaking. We got so emotional about what happened that he had to somehow get involved. I am always worried about our safety. We kept talking about writing letters to stop the violence. I see how very passionate Sean is about this matter. I thought Sean and I need ways to channel this frustration and anger, and other people do too. As I was trying to wrap my head around what happened, the words of Martin Luther King came to me. I have a dream. Janice Bartley has a dream. My dream is end police violence against Black human beings. This subject was on the back burner for a long time, but with what happened to George Floyd, it has come to the forefront. I always advocate for meaningful subjects. I would like the opportunity to advocate for change and let it be known the Black lives of George Floyd, Eric Garner, Mike Brown, Trayvon Martin, Emmett Till, Oscar Grant, Tamir Rice, Freddie Gray, and Ahmaud Arbery, and all the Black human beings who have been killed by police. Matter. I am also heartbroken over the senseless killings of people with disabilities by the police. We need to pay attention to the fact that more than a quarter of the people killed by police violence are people with disabilities. The disabled lives of Alfred Alango, Heath Lamont Scott, Reginald Thomas, Ethan Saylor, Sandra Bland, Daniel Harris, Jeremy Martis, and Melissa Bowers, who were also killed by the police, also matter. As a Black woman with a disability, I can't help but think this could easily happen to me or my fiancé Sean. This is an intersectional issue, and we cannot talk about one without talking about the other. Disability is one of the guiding principles of Black Lives Matter, and that is why we need to advocate for police accountability. To make both of my communities safer, we need to honor the memories of the people we have lost in both the disability community and communities of color by holding police accountable for their actions so that our communities can finally be safe.
The issue that inspired me to become an activist was the lack of accessibility to the New York subway, the New York City Transit subway, for people with disabilities. I was involved in a group called Rise and Resist, and I had been working with the healthcare group, and when the healthcare group sort of started to lag, I wanted to form a group around disability justice, and this seemed like the most obvious issue to tackle, and I relayed it, and I got in touch with Sasha Blair Goldstein, who's written an article on taking the subway as a wheelchair user. He's written an article in the 360 radio for the New York Times on his journey to the subway. So I reached out to him, and he came to a meeting, and we got other people in my gym were just involved from there. But our first action was we came up with this idea that we printed these stickers that said this elevator is dirty or broken, and we put the stickers on the elevators in the subway. Yeah, so it was sort of a rogue, sort of a guerrilla beginning. And then we became involved. Then it went way, way, way further. Andy Byford agreed to go on a ride along with me and Jessica Murray and their advocate named April, whose last name I can't remember, and we spent 3 hours together riding the subway, and Andy and I made a good connection, and I wanted to go work for him.
What inspired me to become an activist was when I first got to college, I knew that there was not that many people like me. I am actually the first openly gay openly gay student in the Melissa Riggio higher education program at the College of Staten Island. And I personally feel, in my opinion, there was not that much representation in the disability and disability people in the LGBTQ community. And I just felt like there was not that much representation, and I took it upon myself to change that.
I became active because back in the 70s and 80s, there were a lot of things going on. The gay movement, the women's movement, the civil rights movement, and that gave me an idea of me to start my own organization called self-advocacy. I started and set up for people who are developmental disabilities, so they can have a platform to speak on. I'm very disappointed in it because it's been taken over by people who do not have a disability. We're still being controlled by the system that controlled me for 18 years of my life. We're still controlling the people that will help me. They like the idea of the word self-advocacy because of the political correct thing to have, but they do not like the concept or the act that comes out of it. I'm hoping that the people who are developing disability one day have a choice to hire and fire people who they pick and choose to work for or take care of them.
Sean and I had a conversation about how we could make a difference and get other people involved and who are passionate about this matter like we are. I reached out to my circle of support and other activists I know for ideas on how we could. Make our voices heard to stop police violence. We founded a group called Self Advocates and Police Violence. For the past few months, people have been coming together every other week to discuss ways to approach this sensitive subject. We've also both been writing letters, working with other advocacy groups, and talking to anyone who will listen to tell them that every life matters, including the lives of my Black and disabled brothers and sisters.
We hate for working together to something. And I actually became involved in disability activism through writing. I'm a poet. I've been a poet since I was in my teens, actually. And when I was 30, I started working for an online journal called We Media that was an online journal magazine for people with disabilities. And it wasn't until I was 30 that I started to surround myself with other disabled people and learn about disability history and so on. I've done a lot of advocacy work around poetry. I formed many committees and organizations, Facebook groups, etc., to bring together writers with disabilities, poets with disabilities. I co-edited the first anthology of poets with disabilities in America, and I more recently co-founded a nonprofit residency for poets with disabilities. The Times, about 5 years ago, wanted to start a series on disability justice and writers, and I acted as an advisor on the beginning of that project and wrote the second article for this series.
For my senior project, we had to choose a issue that meant the most to us, me and my fellow classmates. And I chose to do a safe zone ally training because for a while I worked really closely with the Pride Center and the LGBTQ Resource Center. And I was very involved in the Gay Straight Student Alliance at school on the campus. So that was the inspiration for my senior project, which turned into like a big advocacy thing. I did a safe zone ally training for people with disabilities who identify as LGBTQ+, and for those who are non-LGBTQ identified to become an ally. Basically, we fought so hard for marriage equality, and now we just passed a law saying that it's illegal to fire someone for their sexual orientation or their gender identity, which is a huge victory for the LGBTQ community, but still there's more work to be done.
Back in the 72. That's when the whole world book storybook open. But when the state is director of world book fire Dr. Wilkins and a social worker named Elizabeth Lee. That's one brother. That's when Mike calling around us. And that's when everything went haywire. Because we were on TV night after night after night after night. I think for a whole month. And nobody knew about World Book before we made it public. And we started getting phone calls from everybody all over the world, all over the world. We in the headline yesterday night. I mean, nobody knew this horrible nightmare that was going on in Louisville. People were being abused by staff, beating them with sticks, belt buckles, metal keychains. They used to shout at people. I was out of the pill that they scrubbed the floors with. I mean, that was Scott. They treated people like animals. Yeah, you know how they line up the cows and get them behind the gate. Beautiful. The same thing they did for our people. They were sick and then they were naked, no clothes at all until they got a shower. And there were only 2 people who showered all 70 to 80 people. And they were using the same rag on everybody, the same towel to dry off, but it was horrible. It's a nightmare. A nightmare that we hope that never happens again. Not in this world.
We are here to celebrate people with disabilities, show that we're loud, we're proud, and that we are part of community.
Disability Pride NYC is very happy to be part of this 88th 30th anniversary celebration. Naturally, we were very sad to have had to cancel the 2020 6th annual Disability Pride NYC parade because of COVID-19. But safety is always our #1 concern. We're glad to have this opportunity to celebrate this milestone with you.
Disability Pride Parade is really awesome. It's very large. I'm from California, and we don't have anything on this scale back home to celebrate disabilities. And I just think it's really great to see everybody, disability or not, along with our allies and people who fight for our rights, out together celebrating.
Love it. I come every year. I've been here since the beginning, since the first one, and it's very exciting.
I mean, rarely do you see such a diverse group of people performing such diverse music, you know?
The Disability Pride NYC Parade is the biggest and brightest annual event in New York City history. It raises awareness, increases visibility, and promotes inclusion for the disability community.
Nadina Laspina is an icon activist. I'm not an activist, I'm a jazz musician. So I just did this through pure willpower and love. So what you see is what love can do. Love is a powerful force.
Year after year, this parade attracts thousands of passionate people from dozens of different organizations and hundreds of different backgrounds. The sharing of stories, unified marching, promotion of activism, and pure celebration make this parade a truly unique and empowering experience for all. We at DPNYC want to assure you that the parade will be back in 2021 bigger and better than ever. Thank you for your continued support.
Next piece is part of Lincoln Center's ADA in the Arts video series. It is in collaboration with Queen's Theatre and features the Queen's Theatre for All initiative. It is a virtual reading of Death Bites written by McKenna Metz, and it is performed, written, and directed by a team of disabled artists. We hope you enjoy it.
Hi, I'm McKenna. I'm the writer of Death Bites. I wrote the show because 6 years ago, I was diagnosed with a really rare disease. It's called aplastic anemia. And this is a chronic disease that can be cured with a bone marrow transplant or with medicine and steroids over time. And my goal is to get off the medicine because I can live a normal life at a chronically low platelet count, but I will never be cured. So this show came out of me learning how to navigate the changes in my body and indulging in some self-pity where I called myself a vampire because I spent a summer getting blood transfusions. I've never seen a play, movie, or TV show that examines what it is to live with a condition like mine. Seeing it depicted on stage or screen is very rare. We definitely need more opportunities in the theater and mainstream media for disabled directors, actors, and writers because there is an audience who wants to be educated about the issues that we reflect on. I also think we need more works that center a wide variety of disabled experiences. This year, I became a cancer survivor, and I've seen cancer patients portrayed in media to no end. That's great and was very helpful for me when I was going through treatment to know that I wasn't alone. But patients with a wide variety of symptoms, diseases, and chronic conditions, I have rarely seen that, and I've been living with my chronic illness for 6 years. Final thing, if you can donate blood or platelets, please consider donating to the Red Cross at least twice a year. And if you can handle more than one IV, try donating platelets. Please register for Be the Match. Americans are underwhelmed in this worldwide database, especially people of color. Literally just Google, register, Be the Match. It's easy and free. Donate your blood, pretend you're a vampire. In this reading, we did a really great job of finding the nuance in the work and examining it closely to make sure it meant what we wanted it to be. It helped breathe fresh air into this older play of mine and updated it for our audience right now. I really feel like it fits into the current world because there are more stories about chronic illness in the mainstream media, and there is a significant effort to engage and educate communities through these stories, which I think many theater companies are doing, yet it could go further. It always can go further. We adapted this play for Zoom by rephrasing stage directions with more or less action and trying to create more of a character for the person reading these stage directions and creating more tension in a camera-based environment. Thank you so much.
Hello, and welcome to Death Bites by McKenna Metz, directed by Glenn McDonald. My name is Kerry McMenamin, and I'll be reading stage directions and providing pre-show audio description notes. I have blonde, chin-length straight hair, and am wearing a purple collarless shirt. My head and shoulders are visible, and I'm in front of a green screen. The stage directions during the reading have been revised to provide visual information for blind and low vision audiences. This virtual play reading is a collaboration between Queen's Theatre and Lincoln Center's ADA 30 celebration. For those of you unfamiliar with play readings, here are a few things to keep in mind as you watch Death Bites. Public play readings are an important tool in new play development. Before a new work is fully produced or published, playwrights have the opportunity to hear their play read by actors, guided by a director, in front of an audience. These actors are not asked to memorize their lines, as the dialogue is often changed during rehearsals, and the playwright listens and makes adjustments. Also, play readings are not fully produced and are usually presented without sets, lighting, and costumes. The actors place their scripts on music stands in front of them. This approach allows audiences to use their imaginations and conjure up the world of the play in their heads. Now, during the pandemic, many theaters are presenting virtual play readings. The biggest difference from public play readings is that actors and audiences are not in a shared space. Each is in their own private space. So while virtual play readings require an additional imaginative leap on the part of the audience, they can also achieve an intimacy that would be harder to access in a traditional theater space. In today's reading, the role of Amy is played by Ali Hardy. She has a round face and dark hair pulled up on her head. She is wearing a white patterned hospital gown. Her head and shoulders are seen against a blue background. She remains still throughout most of the play and rarely moves her arms. Dracula is played by Johnny Link. He has short, dark hair and a thin face and is wearing a long-sleeved black turtleneck and headphones. He gestures with his arms and hands throughout the reading, sometimes moving away from the camera, and at other times moving closer to it. He appears in front of a solid white background. The cool midnight air stirs the privacy curtain dividing the hospital room from the room's door. 21-year-old Amy's clothing, blankets, stuffed animals, and games are strewn about the room. Flowers and vases adorn the window ledge with cards and balloons that read, "Get better soon," and "Thinking of you." A man, a shadowy figure, looms over Amy, who sits upright in her hospital bed. Next to her is her dinner on a rolling tray. She's connected to a heart monitor, in which weekly beeps as they engage in a silent battle. Beep, 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 beep.
No.
No. But you are almost dead, are you not? Just a little bite.
Get out of my room before I call my nurse.
Amy, all of the nurses have been hypnotized. They will not hear you.
Go look in another den of shadows.
Amy weakly throws her juice bottle at him. She loses.
Den of shadows. Do I look like I lurk in den like bear?
Amy arms herself with various condiments and jellos, readying herself for battle.
Blood-sucking leech. Let me die in peace.
I'll only, drink, a little, ow. Stop that. I use echolocation. You are literally blinding me.
You're not going to drink my blood, child of the night.
But you are dying.
I know I'm dying. It's all anybody talks about.
Then what's the harm in letting me have a little taste,
It's all I have left.
I know you're close to death. Don't you want to help poor starving vampire have teeny tiny snack? You die anyway, and I go on my merry way, never to be seen again.
Do you have to ask permission? You can't just kill me. Oh wait, you crossed the threshold.
No. I can enter a room like anyone else. The room is an extension of the hospital, therefore its whole interior is permissible. Why am I explaining this to you? I just like to ask dying people if it's okay to suck blood. I'm not only vampire who prefers meals to be dying already. Helps with feeling guilty. Usually people say yes, they want me to drain them so they die faster. It's just part of my job. Feeding myself to save the world.
Saving who? You're a murderer. Get out of my room or I will start throwing things again. Wait, are those fangs even real?
I just saw dentists. Don't look at them. Their glow will literally blind you.
Okay.
Amy, I am confused. I am vampire, like you say. Garlic hating and all. I am offering you shots at good death. Better than this current death. You know your blood is almost kaput, gone. You have days left, maybe hours. I am hungry and has been long century. Let me help you.
I don't need your help. I'm just weak.
You're basically falling over. Here's a chair. Jeez.
I know my body isn't working. I can barely catch my breath. It's working so bad. Side effect, not enough blood in my body. 200 million people have this disease, and of course, they couldn't find a bone marrow match for me. Instead, I got steroids and medicine, and guess what? It wasn't enough. My body just doesn't want to produce cells. I wanted to go on adventures. See the world. Maybe travel to Asia or Europe or Australia. Backpacking through countries. Taking the train everywhere. And then one day, I'd meet a guy at a hostel in Paris. And we'd dance on the sand and drink champagne and laugh at the tourists hoping for directions from the locals. And then we'd fall in love. And we'd buy a house outside the city and raise 3 kids. Emma, Jasper,
and Pierre. And then we'd retire on a farm in lavender country, and we'd milk goats and make soap, and now that possibility is just gone. My life has been hospitals and mom and dad fighting over the bills and trying to get my damn specialty medication from the pharmacy, and time is precious. And death's door is scary. Scarier than vampires being real. I don't know what happens when you die. And so I just want to be here for as long as possible, and
Dracula is drowning in the torrent of her information.
Are you even paying attention?
Are you sure you're not part vampire already? Your hypnosis seems to work quite effectively.
I think we're done here. Go out. Yep, that's it. Find another person to assuage your murderous guilt. Just the way you came in. Turn back into a bat and off you go. A happier, nay, better Dracula than before.
Oh my, I am very flattered, but you have this wrong. I am not Dracula, not the big D. No, no, no.
Well, sorry for the mix-up. Okay, bye.
I am a Dracula. It is a very important distinction.
Yes, I am Groot. We're Groot. We are all Dracula.
Yes, exactly. We say the plural of a Dracula is Dracula. We are all Dracula, like moose.
So let me get this straight. Every single vampire in the world is named Dracula.
Yes. Well, at first, it's tradition to honor our first creator for about the first 500 years. And everything we wear, from our devastating capes to our sharp teeth on display, and our glorious accents, and our...
I knew it!
Dracula crosses his hands over his chest in a proud gesture.
It is an honor to have a fake accent for 500 years. Oh, I forgot how annoying teeny little miserable humans can be.
If the accent is fake, you probably are too. I bet the whole bat thing was just like an illusion or something, huh? Are you a street magician? Where's your partner? Putting on a turtleneck so he can perform tricks too? Or am I just bad shit? And this is just like a manifestation of my like fear or something, right? A hallucination from all the medication? Like I'm afraid of you. Well, you know what? I can kill you just as easily as you can kill me. It's not a stake, but it'll have to do.
She brandishes a knitting needle.
Wow, a knitting needle, so scary. You cannot knit me. I am a Dracula. I am one of many, and I have been here for centuries, seen things you'd never even dream of. I've watched the powers that be rise and fall, observed mysteries your fragile mind couldn't even possibly handle. I've witnessed wonders and terrors and...
Amy stares at him with awe.
Why are you looking at me like that?
You could turn me.
What?
You could turn me into a vampire.
You want me to make you vampire? Undead, drinks blood, allergic to crosses and sunlight.
Absolutely.
No way. What about the murdering, the pillaging? What would your parents think?
My parents have always encouraged me to follow my dreams. They'd want me to do this. I'd get a chance at a normal, well, mostly normal life. I can help give them the golden years they deserve by, like, leaving them presents for the next 100 years or something. Anyway, I'll figure it out, and meanwhile, I can finally go on an adventure. I won't be weak or out of breath or low in my counts at all. I'd just be, undead. Is that politically correct? You said you wanted to drink my blood.
Amy, your parents would care about your body. If it just vanished, they would be miserable. My parents could not find my body, and it tore them apart. They probably thought it vanished on a plague cart or was cut up and sold as exotic meat. It must have been horrible. They had no burial mound to attend to, no grave marker to commemorate my existence. You have no idea what watching that happen was like. Being a new vampire is terrible.
My parents deserve a life of their own, not one where all they do is take care of me. And who needs a tombstone when I could ask to be cremated? They could hold my urn every day and think about me. And I'd be around to make sure that they'd have a good life. Look, I'm already used to blood. It doesn't gross me out because of all the transfusions. I've been sick for years.
Yeah, well, murdering people is its own kind of sickness. I understand where you are coming from. Really, my life wasn't that great either. I mean, who wants to be a cartographer or tend a sheep for a living? I just don't think this is the right path for you. Being a vampire is a curse. You'll want to hurt people, and that urge takes years, if not decades, to master. It can be a very sad, lonely life. Do you think I would want that for you? Do you think I wanted that for me?
I don't know what you've been through, and I'm sorry your parents had no closure. But mine would. And then they would live. And I want to live too.
Well, being a vampire isn't living.
It'd be a new adventure. A new beginning. Isn't that what life's about? Second chance.
You're not becoming a vampire. End of discussion. I will go find new midnight snack. You know where the geriatric ward is?
Dracula disappears as Amy stabs her arm with a sharp knitting needle and bleeds. She thrusts a bloody rag towards him.
Smell that? Salty and rusty and delicious, right?
Dracula is drawn back into her room.
My tasty, warm blood. Just look at it trickling out. Juicy, red, right here for the taking. I promise it won't clot, but it will run out if you don't drink it. And then my death will be for nothing.
The odor of fresh blood mesmerizes him.
No. You are better than these animal instincts.
Let me bite you. Is that how it works? Give me your arm.
Amy, I was changed against my will. How would you like to be force-fed blood while internally drowning as an animal is feeding from you? That's why I always give people a choice when they are dying. Either I kill them painlessly, easily, or they die from their disease. Why would I want to do to anyone else what was done to me? Turn them from their normal lives, their family, their loved ones.
I understand that. You have a moral compass. I admire that. In fact, it's kind of cool that you don't go around killing people every which way. But the process of dying is not living. There's a world outside these hospital walls, and I want to see it.
He grabs Amy's wrist. His pupils dilate and his eyes start swirling red. The bloodlust almost takes him. He lets go, wiping his salivating mouth.
I will try to change you if your heart desires it. Think of this like a blood transfusion. You need my blood to replace your blood. So you drink while I drink and all's good. At least I think so.
I'll try to be good at fighting. I don't have much experience.
It's okay. Take my arm. Now don't think I'm a Twilight vampire. You won't sparkle in sunlight and shit.
They sit on the bed together, holding each other's arms.
Are you nervous?
This is my first time and all.
Just bite me.
Dracula bites Amy and her blood sprays everywhere. They both disappear from view. Dracula drinks her blood in a feeding frenzy, like a shark finding prey. Amy slowly losing consciousness. She is dying. With her remaining strength, she reaches for Dracula and they wrestle for control. Her heart monitor falls over. She finally lands a bite in his neck and takes a sip. Her heart monitor beats frantically and then Amy flatlines. Beep. Dracula drinks. Beep. He drinks. Beep. He drinks. Suddenly, Dracula reemerges. He pushes himself off of Amy, horrified at what he's done. He shakes her, wiping blood off of himself.
Amy. Hey, you okay, Amy?
Amy sits up. Lights change from fluorescent blue to warm and golden, magical. Her hospital gown is gone, and she now wears a black dress and black scarf. Her hair is down, long and flowing. She gets out of bed. Her fangs glow. She's standing tall and strong, and not the least tired or out of breath.
It worked.
What? You thought it wouldn't work?
It's just a delicate process.
Hey, your voice is normal.
Fuck. No, it's not. I mean, yes, it is. Completely normal accent.
Amy pulls the cords off of her heart monitor off her chest and accidentally whips the machine forward, crashing it into the wall.
Oh, shoot!
Dracula sets the machine upright.
Drill practice. You'll get used to being strong. We got to go. Someone probably heard that.
This is amazing.
You're strong enough to make the world a better place. This is now your sacred mission. Your job.
We're career Dracula? Shit.
Saving the world is in our job description. The Dracula protect the environment. Got to make sure the humans don't start hunting mermaids or harvesting magic beans again.
No freaking way.
Wait.
No need to be condescending.
Are you ready? Change into bat and leave shit hospital? Shit life?
It wasn't shit. It was just hard. I was so tired all the time, it was difficult to do anything. But I guess shit happens and we reset our expectations. So if being a vampire is my new disease, then call me sick.
Whether a disease or sucking people's blood, it shouldn't hold you back from experiencing life. We have to make do with the cards we've been dealt.
Dracula opens the hospital window, punching out the screen and letting in the cold night air.
Where are we going?
Where do you want to go? The possibilities are endless.
Take me on an adventure.
You are already on it.
End of play.
My name is Heidi Latsky, choreographer, artistic director of Heidi Latsky Dance in New York City. Had a physically integrated company since 2006. In 2015, for the 25th anniversary of the ADA, the MOPD commissioned me to create guerrilla art, just art to expose people to people with disabilities throughout the 5 boroughs of New York. And that was the genesis of a piece I call On Display, which was a live sculpture court where the performers are actually the sculptures and where passersby have the opportunity to get very close and intimate with all the performers / sculptures. And they can do this at their own pace and with their own sense of comfort around proximity. Since that time, the company's focus has been on disrupting space, dismantling normal, and redefining beauty and virtuosity. So during this COVID experience, the endlessly puzzling question for me has been, how do I continue to do my work that is impactful, and how do I carry out our mission, which is to shift people's perceptions around disability, dance, and art. This film, Solo Flight, is the first of a series of both live and virtual experiences that speak to the isolation of all of us during this pandemic, Quite literally, it was created during quarantine and then 2 weeks after the protest began, which I believe has been subliminally influential in my putting this together. Although isolation has been an underlining theme in my work from the beginning, I think COVID-19 has just served to magnify the profound feelings that surface when isolated, and also, conversely, our deep need for community. So I asked all the dancers in the film to, many months ago, some more recently, to film themselves dancing either in their homes or nearby. Some submitted new solos about a significant moment in their lives. Some submitted material from our repertory. I knew from the get-go that I wanted the footage to speak for itself, and for the performer who submitted it, that I wanted to find the essence within a very short period of time of each person and have that drive the film. And especially in these current times, I feel strongly that my role as a creator is to provide a structure that would serve as a platform for the diverse voices embodied in the film. So to have Solo Flight, part of the Lincoln Center ADA 30 celebration, is as exciting as it is profound. To be able to share the beauty of the dancers in Solo Flight with a wide audience gives me an incredible joy and hope for the future for our art form, and I thank everyone who has made this film possible.
This is you. a swollen river. You probably call it the Nile.
Te siento lejos, te siento tan lejos.
Borrowed time.
So to get started, my name is Paul. I am wearing a gray polo. I have brown hair, short brown hair, and I am the moderator for the event. Steve is wearing a gray pullover, Team USA. He's a white male, brown hair, short on the sides, as well as spiked hair up top. And then we have Nikki, she is wearing a gray t-shirt with her earbuds in. She has long black hair. She's African American, she's black. And then we also have Francesco, who is a white male. He's wearing a white button-down shirt. He also has brown hair that goes to about the top of his ears. All right, so we're gonna get started. Welcome to Disability Unite's Adaptive Sports Panel. Today we're gonna talk about adaptive and Paralympic sport. 30 years with the ADA. We're gonna take a look back as well as look into the future. My name is Paul Ward and I am the Adaptive Programming Coordinator for NYC Parks and will be the moderator for this panel. We're extremely lucky to have three very accomplished athletes and people with us today. First, if you guys don't mind, could you say your first and last name for us so that we have that on record? Nikki, can you go first for us?
Nikki Nieves.
Great, thank you. So first we have Nikki Nieves, who is currently on the women's national sitting volleyball team. She competed in the 2016 Paralympic Games, winning gold in Rio. She is also an athlete representative for World Para Volley and Para Volley Pan America. Nikki also created and manages a nonprofit called Limitless People, Inc., where she provides free clinics, volleyball training, and feeds those less fortunate. Second, we have Steve Serio, who is a three-time Paralympian and co-captain of the USA men's national wheelchair basketball team. They won gold at the 2016 Paralympic Games in Rio and bronze at the 2012 Paralympic Games in London. Finally, we have Francesco Magisano, who is an elite para triathlete and cyclist who races for both his home team, Tri-Achilles, as well as representing the USA on the national and international levels. His current goal is to race at the 2021 Paralympic Games in Tokyo. So thank you all for spending some time with us today. I want to get right kind of into the questions for you guys. My first main question is so we can get a little bit more background on each of you. Why don't you tell me and the audience a little about yourself, where you guys grew up, what your disability is, and what's your first memory of accessibility being a challenge for you? Steve, why don't you start?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Paul. My name is Steve, and I'm originally from Long Island, New York. I was actually born with a benign spinal tumor that went undiagnosed for the first 11 months of my life. During that time, the tumor became infected and inflamed and actually crushed my spinal cord, resulting in the incomplete paralysis of my lower extremities. So living with a disability, growing up with a disability is pretty much all I know. When I read that question about, your first experience, with a disability or feeling empowered, I actually struggled to come up with one because this has just been my life. It's just my life has pretty much been to not make excuses, to just kind of live the life that you want and don't apologize for that in a world that really wasn't built for us. So I don't really have a good answer to about one single moment, but we're just trying to do the best we can each and every day.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. As much as the ADA, I think that we can agree that as much as the ADA has provided people with disabilities, like myself, who I'm also in a wheelchair, I think we do still have a ways to go. But I think it definitely did provide the groundwork and the framing to hopefully keep making progress into the future. Nikki, can you talk to us a little bit about yourself?
So my name is Nikki Nieves. Originally, I'm from New York. I'm a Queens girl. But my dad retired, so high school, we moved down to Florida, graduated from here, went back to New York, played at Queens College, and that's how I kind of stumbled into the adaptive sports world. They had reached out and asked if I wanted to play sitting volleyball, and I was kind of hesitant about it at first because, like Steve, like I don't have two hands. I was born with only one, but this is my life. It's all I know. So for me, having to like change almost kind of like mental frame as in I'm playing in a different capacity was challenging for me because I always did everything that everybody else did. And if I didn't have, like, if I couldn't, I found a way to do it. But I did. I ended up trying it and I liked it. So I stayed with it. And to be honest, it's weird because growing up, I never really had tough challenges to whereas people didn't want to let me do something because I'm missing a hand, because I'm quote unquote disabled. I hate that word. But as I got into the world of Paralympics and adaptive sports, and I became friends with different people, and I got to share just like life experiences or just hear experiences of other individuals that are having a hard time, or other individuals that were kept from participating in a sport because they were different. And that's where the ADA kind of stepped in and helped them, you know, prove like I'm a human. Just because I do things differently doesn't mean that I should be barred from doing so. That was the eye opener for me. And that kind of like was my moment of empowerment too, because, you know, these are my friends and we're in this world together. So your fight is my fight. And if you are being put in a position where they're taking away your opportunity to be the best that you can be as an athlete, then that becomes my fight too. So, and those moments where I like met these people, that's like my moment of empowerment, so to say.
Awesome, thanks so much. And we're going to dive a little bit more into some of what you said a little bit later. Francesco, can you talk a little bit about yourself, please?
Yeah, definitely. So my name's Francesco. I grew up on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. And I would say, so I was born with retinoblastoma, which for those who don't know is eye cancer. And because I had that from an early age, I kind of grew up just being blind. So that was the normal. So I would say the biggest thing that I had to encounter, or the first thing, was trying to find a way to get involved with sports. Because, you know, obviously growing up, you go to gym class and stuff like that, but there wasn't a real clear adaptive way for me to do a lot of those activities. And so trying to figure out a path to get involved, and that was about the time of college, the first hurdle of really exploring this world of parasports and seeing what it had to offer.
Awesome, thanks. So the next question I have for you guys is a little bit different. So I'm interested to knowing when you initially became cognizant or aware of the ADA and the first positive impact you feel like it had on your life. I think Nikki kind of touched base on that a little bit with her previous answer. I mean, I think, as Steve mentioned earlier, there's still obviously some frustrations in different cities that we live in, whereas we're not all on the same level playing field, I don't think. But I mean, Francesco, was there first moment where you're like, okay, I'm getting this opportunity because the ADA was put in place for you?
Yeah, 100%. And it had to do with, so I work for a nonprofit called Achilles International, and we have, you know, tens of thousands of people with disabilities all around the world in different chapters. And specifically within the US, we have so many people involved with mainstream events, like, you know, huge events like New York City Marathon, things like that. And a lot of that has to do with the ADA and the foundation that has helped build in terms of inclusivity and just getting people on the same level and the same opportunities.
Great, that's perfect. Steve, I'm going to go to you next. I know you and I have talked a little bit about this, and I don't want to steal your thunder. but I know we talked a little bit about college, and you and I went to the same school. But was there a first time you felt a positive impact, whether it's getting the same opportunities at a college like U of I, or maybe even before that? When was the first impact that you felt like the ADA had on your life?
Yeah, the first time the ADA really had an impact on me was actually before college. I was always an athlete growing up, but my school board never let me compete for varsity athletics because of safety and liability reasons for myself and for the other athletes. So I always felt like growing up, it was always a struggle. We would always kind of use the ADA as kind of the wind behind our sails, but there was just always different reasons why we were kind of failing in creating a more inclusive lifestyle for me personally. But the one piece that we won was actually in driver's ed. Driver's ed was, obviously an education program for high school students in order to learn how to drive. But I need certain hand controls and I need certain accessibility aspects in the car that allow me to drive just like everyone else. And we came to an agreement that the school board would purchase hand controls for me to be able to learn how to drive in the driver's ed car. But for liability reasons, there would be no other students in the car. So it was basically just me and the driver's ed teacher. So I always think that there's kind of a balance when it comes to implementing real world things in terms of the ADA. But that was the first time in my life that I really remember fighting for something that I was privileged to, although that there were some people that wanted to maybe not give me the access to that program. So I'm glad we won because driving is a pretty cool aspect of growing up with certain changes and certain differences that all the other kids had in their development.
Awesome, thanks. Nikki, did you have anything to kind of add to what you said before? Was there, I know you kind of mentioned in college when you had, or maybe it was right before college, I can't really remember, where you were recruited to play sit volleyball. But before that, was there any, did the ADA have any sort of positive impact in your growing up, or getting you on similar playing field as some of the people you went to school with?
I want to say that the coaches that I have, and I know one of them for sure, are very aware of the ADA and how it protects us as individuals. So, of course, when you meet any new coach, there's always going to be kind of like that fear of you being able to perform what they're asking you to do. But I know because of the ADA, it's like, okay, you can't just shun me and tell me no. You have to let me try and adapt to what you're asking me and actually see if I can perform it. And I'm really thankful for that. And like you had mentioned before, not all cities are as progressive. Even hearing like nightmare stories nowadays, I'm like, what? Like, at least let the kid try it. Like, you can't just look at them and tell them no, But I'm very, very thankful for the life that I've had and for the coaches that are aware of it and know that like that's kind of like my backup.
Awesome. Now, I want to talk a little bit more about each of your sport journey. Now, and each of you guys have a different disability. Francesco, do you remember when or where the love of your sport started? Like when you fell in love with being a triathlete, or if it was cycling at first, or
yeah, definitely. Yeah. Definitely. So it all started actually during my first race. And the way I got involved was super unorthodox because I actually powerlifted when I was in high school and college. And I met a guy who participated in triathlon with Achilles in a supermarket checkout line. And he just saw my cane, was like, hey bro, you should show up to the park, like do some triathlons. And so that was how I first heard about it. And then a few months after that, I did my first race, and I just absolutely loved it. Like the feeling of racing and, you know, like competing against your buddies, it's like nothing else.
For sure. And I can imagine that kind of fueled your fire to keep on going.
Of course. You want to beat your friends.
Right, exactly, definitely. And it's awesome that you've been able to get to a place where you might have the opportunity to represent your country.
Yeah.
Nikki, what about you?
For me, it's kind of weird because I've always loved volleyball, but I feel like I fell in love with it more when I started playing sitting. And I don't know, for me, sitting volleyball is like the neutralizer. Like it can go for anybody. You can be able-bodied, you can be disabled, but everybody can sit down and play it. And it just gave me such an appreciation for just like the camaraderie that it creates and the family that it creates. And because I've been playing it for so long, and the lifetime of an athlete within sitting volleyball might be different than the lifetime of an athlete that's in traditional volleyball, these are some of the same girls that I've seen for years now, and some of the same teams that I've played that become my friends. So it's kind of just like this world of just like friends and family, and you're like watching these people grow up and watching them like coach their kids how to play traditional volleyball or sitting volleyball, and just watching your sport spread as a whole. That's like when I was just like, man, I really love it. And it kind of like, it's kind of weird because sometimes, you know, people are like, what do you do outside of volleyball? But then, you know, you create this little life of volleyball outside of volleyball. So it just kind of like continues. But for me, definitely playing sitting volleyball has like made my love for the game times 1,000.
Definitely. Like I know with playing wheelchair basketball, like just throughout the years, it's such something that's so unique to sport in general, where you're meeting these people who are very similar to you, and then you slowly kind of move up the ranks with them, and you create this community where you can kind of relate to them, and you have all these shared experiences that are so unique to you in those relationships, and it's so special, and I don't think it can be replaced compared to like people who haven't played a sport before. It's a unique situation, I think. Steve, what about yourself?
Yeah, so I've always been an athlete ever since I was young, but during childhood, my athletic experiences were really just about hanging with my friends. I didn't know anything about the world of adaptive sports, and basically what I did as an athlete is I would try to fit into the world of able-bodied athletics, and we would always make accommodations for, you know, what I could and couldn't do. Like, for instance, I was a big baseball fan growing up. And when it was my turn to hit, I would get up to the plate, I would hit the ball, but then one of my friends would run down to first. And then I would take his or her place when the play was stopped. And, you know, my life was about trying to fit in to an able-bodied world. And then when I was about 15 years old, through a physical therapist, I found wheelchair basketball. And I tell people I haven't left the gym since. And what wheelchair basketball really did was it allowed me to embrace the things that make me unique and embrace the things that make me different. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't ashamed of being disabled. I wasn't ashamed of being different. And a new world was opened up to me. And that's why it's not necessarily just about the wins or losses or the accomplishments that we all collectively have on the field of play, but it's really about opening up this new world with people who have similar experiences to us. And instead of us trying to fit into the world around us, this world was created for us. And that's why it's so powerful, and such an inclusive environment for all people. And it's one of the most powerful experiences that I've had in my entire life.
Kind of, I'm going to skip around a little bit, but kind of going off what you said there, I think being a person with a disability, and you kind of brought it up right there, Steve, like I think a lot of us, we we have, at least I've been fortunate enough, or very fortunate to have parents who are supportive and or family members who are there and want to do the best they can or put us in the best situations to succeed. But I think also growing up, it's very rare to have a person with a disability in that same household as you. So like, okay, you can ask your parents, okay, I'm going through this, can you help me out with that? Or what should I do? But they'll try to best answer those questions. But I mean, as I'm an adult now and kind of looking back at things, like they're kind of winging it, you know? So, I mean, what sort of advice do you have for parents where they might be going through the same situation and they don't really know how to answer those questions? What would you say to those parents, do you think? See if you can, why don't you go first?
Yeah, it's definitely not an easy situation, especially when you don't have any relationships to the adaptive sports world. But what I always tell parents is two things. The first thing is I've never met someone who is, you know, quote unquote, overcome their disability or who has accomplished a lot by being babied or by focusing on the things that their child cannot do. You know, I think that when the parents focus on what a child can't do, the child instinctively, starts to focus on his or her limitations. And I like to tell people that my parents never treated me any differently. I got in trouble just as much as any other kid. And they always pushed me to challenge myself, not only physically, but, you know, in the real world. But what I'll also say is for parents who maybe don't have a lot of experience with the adaptive sports community, I would say that there's always a nonprofit. There's always adaptive sports programs locally or on social media that can kind of provide a little bit more of an education about the adaptive sports world. I know that for my parents, even though that wheelchair basketball team that I started to play on, they practiced 10 minutes away from where I grew up, and I never knew about it, only because it wasn't really something I was ever searching for. But as parents of a child with a disability, you want to create as many opportunities for that child as possible, whether that be in the athletics world or something else. And I would say that the adaptive sports community is one of the most welcoming and open-minded communities that we have, because everybody understands the power of being different and the power of everyone's differences and how to use that to your advantage and how to use that in a positive way. So I would just encourage them to seek out as many resources and create as many opportunities for their child as humanly possible.
Great. Nikki, do you have anything to kind of add off that? I know kind of let me just go with, do you have anything to add off that?
I'm just going to say I completely agree with Steve. Finding community is really important, and I didn't realize that until I got older. But just little things, like little nuances, like, oh, you hold things in your elbow? Why didn't I think of that? Or like, oh, let me tell you how I got over this so you're not wondering how to do it for the next 10 years instead of just tackling it now, you know? So finding community is really important and encouraging. Just like Steve, like I, not once did my parents ever say, oh, well, you know, you only have one hand, maybe you shouldn't. No, they were always like, okay, bye, like go try it. Have fun at tryouts. Like, it is what it is. Now that I'm older, sometimes, like, if something seems dangerous, they're like, well, Nikki, I don't know. I'm like, well, why not? Like, I can do it, you know? But as far as, like, being a child, no, they were super encouraging, super positive. They always had my back. So just community and encouragement. And I can't imagine what it feels like to have a child that has a disability, because I'm sure just any parent, you're having a kid, a baby, and you're nervous as it is. And so to put a disability on top of that, you know, first time parent, you're like, oh my gosh, like, what do I do, you know? So I'm sure that they're going to like have those nerves, but just just encourage, you know, you never know what your child could be or where they could reach just by hearing you say like, oh yeah, go for it, you know?
And yeah, definitely. And Francesco, do you have anything else?
Yeah, I mean, they absolutely said it perfectly. I love the idea of focusing on what you can do and not what you can't do. And you might not know what you can do until you try a bunch of times, and obviously you'll fail. But and honestly, just don't be afraid of that. Just find a community, go out there, and just the worst that'll happen is that you fail, and that's I failed so many times before I found something that works, and you'll meet people along the way and form relationships along the way. And it's just, it's awesome.
Definitely. I also think kind of what you guys talked about too is it's okay for parents not to know the answers. Like it's really important, and it's okay to rely on other people who are going through similar things. That's something also I like, and I think all of us like about sport is you get to talk to your peers and kind of talk about what your guys are going through that other people aren't going through, and it's just unique to your situation. So I think it's definitely important to reiterate that. So kind of getting a little bit back to the ADA and your travel experiences. Each of you have had an awesome opportunity to travel because of the sport that you guys are competing in. What do you think, let's leave the US out of it right now, but can you tell me what country you found to be the most successful in your travels as well as the least accessible? And then obviously if you guys have any stories of not great accessibility, I'd love to hear about that too. So Francesco, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. So I flew to Tokyo, Japan a few years ago. And this is actually a really funny story because in Japan, any country you visit, it's going to be different from New York and the US, right? So they'll do accessibility a different way. They'll do access a slightly different way. So for them, on the streets of Tokyo, they actually have this raised bump, this line that goes down the center of the sidewalk. And it's designed so that blind people, when they use their cane, when I walk, I can kind of follow this line and it'll keep me in the center of the sidewalk. So I don't, there's a lot of driveways and stuff. But when I went, I didn't realize that was for. So I was getting angry actually, because I'm like, who would design a sidewalk with this line smack in the middle? It's like the worst thing for blind people. And then I realized like, oh, this is specifically for blind, it was definitely an aha moment. I think that's just a pretty cool example of how people have different ways to make things accessible, and one's not necessarily better than the other. It's just different, And so it's cool to travel to experience those different cultures and those different ways of doing things.
Definitely. Like I can only imagine like going to a country where you don't speak the language, and then also not being able to see in that country too, and not have the same like rules, and like everyone has different rules, and it's just it must have been quite a experience, I would imagine.
Oh, it's super interesting. I mean, and I think similar to what we just talked about, like parenting and how to get kids involved. Like you just have to go and do it and try it, and it's okay not knowing. But I think letting that lack of knowledge hold you back, I think that's where things can go wrong. So I would just go for it.
Yeah, I think that's a very empowering statement that you just had for sure. Nikki, what about your travels?
I mean, with me it's a little different because I'm missing only a hand. But as far as like really accessible with just me and my team, because they do wear prosthetics, I would say the Netherlands, so Holland. I can't remember a time where we've ever had any issues. I will say, I think in China, sometimes when there's a bunch of stairs or there's not elevators, like available to take, and we have to climb all these stairs. And it's funny, like I don't wear a prosthetic, but like in those moments, I'm like, seriously, like where's the ADA? Like in my head, you know what I mean? But definitely China. But I love Holland. I feel like everything was like made for everyone, and if not, there was like something there in place to help you.
Yeah, I think that must be a unique experience with using prosthetics, and I think it's probably taking upstairs. Going upstairs has a greater impact on people than, I mean, some people compared to others because of just how the prosthetic interacts with
Yeah,
with knees and
definitely.
stuff, right?
Especially like we're using our legs a lot to like push on the floor. So you figure if you have like 2 matches in a day and you're going up and down these stairs on one leg in a prosthetic, like it's pretty taxing.
For sure. Steve, what about you?
Yeah. So when we travel with Team USA, we're pretty pampered as their local organizing committee kind of knows what to expect when a group of people in wheelchairs are going to interact with their community. I would say that some of the older cities across Europe, like Milan or somewhere like that, where they have cobblestones in the streets, or their architecture is so old that they don't have a place to put an ADA ramp or an ADA an elevator or something like that. Those have presented some challenges to us. I mean, to be honest, I think, as you know, Paul, living in New York City in a wheelchair is not the easiest. There's definitely some pieces in place that allow us to use public transportation, but I think it can always improve. The places that I've been to with the great accessibility is, like Francesco said, Tokyo is one of the places that really understands how to use different aspects of their community to be as inclusive as possible. While also, I lived in Germany for 5 years, and Germany is one of those places that takes disability and inclusivity extremely seriously, as they make accommodations throughout their community in terms of public transportation, in terms of having a companion, in terms of making sure that each building has some form of accessibility to everybody. So those are some pros and cons.
Awesome, thanks very much. Now I want to kind of go off of those discussions of being inclusive. Nikki, I think you have a very unique perspective in that you played volleyball at Queens College alongside able-bodied players. So that's a very inclusive opportunity. And from what it sounds like, that sounds like it was the norm for you growing up as well. Does that happen a lot in your sport, where SIT volleyball players have played for their able-bodied teams, whether it's in college, high school, etc., and then they see SIT volleyball later in life, or does it depend on the person?
I want to say out of my entire team, so maybe like 17 of us right now. I think about only two don't come from volleyball. So everyone else, well, three don't come from volleyball. Everyone else came out of a different sport, but they still played it able-bodied. So we had like a girl that played D1 basketball in a prosthetic, a girl that played D1 lacrosse, and one that played softball in high school. So all of us, we've all played a sport, and then the majority of the girls that have played volleyball, we've all come from the able-bodied world. I feel like as big as, the adaptive sports and Paralympic movement is, when you're in it, like you see it growing, when you're not in it, it's not as big. So you don't see it until you're a little bit older. So maybe like high school, and for me, even in college, because now the paths start intersecting, and then people see you, or you see it and you're like, wait, what's that? Or you're approached just like I was. And for, dare I say, all of us, growing up with parents that encourage you to do whatever you want, the last thing on your mind is to go and look for any kind of community that is adaptive, or look for any sport that is going to adapt it for you when you've already made the arrangements and you've been successful in doing it, like in the able-bodied world. So yeah, I've just, for us, it's completely normal. Like, it's just the norm. And a lot of times recruiting, when it comes to women for sitting volleyball, you're finding them at able-bodied events. So at juniors tournaments, you're finding them at college level, you're finding them, maybe playing in like a league or something. It doesn't really happen in an adaptive, I don't want to say it doesn't, but it's very rare for it to happen in an adaptive space.
I think that's very unique. Like, do you think that puts Team USA I mean, obviously it doesn't hinder you guys because you guys have most recently won gold, but do you think it puts Team USA in like a hole, or do you think it's similar? Is it similar in other countries, or like how is it? Have you been able to compare?
I don't think it puts us in a hole. I feel like now with all the changes that have been happening within like the USOPC and even Team USA making it both of us instead of just one, I feel like now society is kind of seeing us as equal and not less than, or not as the check box for other. So now when we are presenting like the sport to them or saying, hey, maybe you should come try this, they're more open to it because it's not something that's like, oh, well, it's for people that, are disabled or they have to adapt. So maybe before, because even for me, I was like, I'm not doing that. Like, I don't want to play sitting volleyball. Like, I'm fine. I'm playing regular volleyball, But now we've come a long way in terms of just social media. Like that's been like the biggest thing. As far as other countries, they're a little bit different. I don't know. I feel like things are more off on like run on like the government side. So like their recruiting and everything looks different. I know on the men's side, it kind of looks like ours because a lot of our men are prior military. And that's what I've seen on the men's side in other countries for volleyball too. So it's a lot of prior military. But women, I feel like our case is like a little unique. Everything is kind of like different in other countries.
Great, thank you. That's really helpful. I'm gonna circle back with, I think, a more all-encompassing question for all of you guys. After I go through, I want to talk to Steve and Francesco about some of their experiences too. Steve, your situation was similar, but in an opposite way, I feel. For those, actually you brought it up, you played professional wheelchair basketball in Europe. And during that time, you had able-bodied players play in wheelchairs alongside you. Can you tell us more about that? What was the experience like having that?
Yeah, the word inclusivity it's an interesting word when it comes to wheelchair basketball. There's always going to be the high performance side of me that looks at me as a basketball player first. And I always have the mentality that, put Steph Curry or put Klay Thompson or put whoever in a wheelchair and I will outshoot them. And there's always going to be that high performance aspect of things. But also, I also understand the other side of the argument where, if an able-bodied athlete is playing wheelchair basketball, they're taking away an opportunity for someone with a disability who can't play able-bodied sports. I think when it comes to inclusion for our sport specifically, I think it really comes at, like the elementary school or high school levels, in which I can always remember that in PE class, I would always have to figure out different ways to adapt my capabilities to whatever the class was doing. But if, for instance, if a school purchased 10 wheelchairs and there was one person with a disability in that school district, they could figure out different ways to incorporate adaptive sports into their curriculum to make a more inclusive atmosphere. For instance, they could play wheelchair basketball, they could play wheelchair tennis. And this is something that able bodies can do just alongside people with disabilities. So I think that I can understand it from both sides. But ultimately the goal is to create as many experiences or as many opportunities for people with disabilities as humanly possible. And that's what adaptive sports really does. But I definitely see it from both sides. I really want to outshoot Steph Curry in a wheelchair one day.
I could see wanting that competitive drive to be able to do that and show that to people, because I think that puts you, or it gives more credibility possibly to our sport, where you're just as good of a shooter as someone like Steph Curry, right? Francesca, so correct me if I'm wrong, but you compete with a guide, right?
That's right, yeah.
So I'm not sure how I would phrase it. Your sport, you personally need a guide to compete in the events and everything, correct?
Yeah.
Can you tell us kind of what your preparation is like? How do you pick the guide you compete with, and as you get better in your sport, does that guide go up with you, or I'm sure, I don't know, does it get to a point where you're like, sorry, you're not as fast as me, I need someone who's quicker and more competitive with me? What's that process like?
Right. So I categorize my events into two categories. One that I really need to do a good time, and the other one where it's more just for fun, and that sort of coincides with my role with Achilles. But for the competitive ones, yeah, it gets harder the faster of an athlete you are, because obviously you need your guide to be able to do your pace plus a little bit more, because it's mentally taxing on them to have the brain power to do their own race plus worry about someone else. So you ideally want someone 3 to 5% faster than you are in all three disciplines when it comes to triathlon, because that's just it's hard, definitely, the higher you get. But also it's cool because at a lot of these pro races, you meet these athletes doing regular able-bodied pro events, and some of them see us race and figure out or decide, hey, I want to give that a shot. So a few of my guides have actually come from pro races, seeing the Paradivision race alongside them or after them, and expressing interest in doing that.
That's awesome. That makes it a little bit more, I think that's makes things probably easier. That way, that they've been competing on a similar level. I'll bring this up to you too, to start, Francesco, is this kind of the question on inclusion and inclusivity, do you think, how beneficial do you think it is for it to help teach people without disabilities about the sports that you guys compete in? Do you think that's a pretty big positive of people who might not have a disability to get the opportunity to either run alongside you or cycle with you, or compete with you? Is that how beneficial do you?
Yeah, I think it's huge, because whether someone is racing literally alongside us as a guide, or we're just having events that coincide, the New York City Marathon or other events like that, it's just seeing it puts so much more meaning to the experience. You can read about it, how many able-bodied athletes are really going to search out para sports, right, and actively look into it. So it being alongside it and mainstreaming it is, I think, really, really crucial in communicating what we're all about and just raising awareness. Because once that awareness is raised, then we can really tackle all the other things that go along with it, whether it's on the advocacy side or just, inclusivity from school all the way up to pro sports. So I think that first step just comes with raising awareness of who we are and what we do and what we're able to do.
Definitely, I agree. Nikki, do you have anything to kind of add about the inclusivity factor of things and what it teaches people?
Yeah, I think it teaches people to be more open-minded and a greater appreciation for the sport, because you don't know if you even like it until you try it, right? And then you appreciate it because you see how hard it is. You begin to understand what the athletes put in to maintain being at the top or to be at the top. And through inclusivity, you grow it. So because you taught one person, that one person might be bringing it to a school district that they work at or a company that they work at, and it just continues to grow until hopefully one day everybody's doing everything in the capacity that they can and they're not looked at any differently.
For sure. Yeah, I agree with you. Steve, do you have anything that hasn't been said?
Oh, I mean, I thought those were two perfect answers. The only thing I'll add is, adaptive sports provides people the lens to see what people can do, not what they can't do. And when we talk about creating an inclusive environment or an inclusive community, you're really taught to see each person as a person or a human first, not someone with a disability first and foremost. And adaptive sports shines the light on the capabilities of each and every person. And it's definitely a tool in which we can create a more inclusive society.
Definitely. So another thing that I think that gets brought up during the talk about inclusivity is, I think correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the media and the US sees adaptive sport oftentimes as an inspirational story rather than athletes competing at the highest levels, right? So people often, I don't think, see or know how much like you guys put into competing at that sport, at your individual sport, at that highest level. And it's just it's the same amount of work as like an able-bodied athlete. Do you feel like the perception is changing at all, or how can we drive that change, I guess, more effectively? Steve, do you have anything about that?
Yeah. Well, I think the perception of adaptive sports are changing. I think that I can just note for myself, creating or competing in each Paralympics since 2008, the awareness, the media is being used more for creating opportunities rather than showing people in a quote unquote inspiring light. Just because I have a disability and I can play basketball, that's no reason for me to be inspiring. It's more about focusing on me being an athlete first and not letting my disability hold me back from the things that I want to accomplish. I don't ever highlight the fact that it's great that I'm just out there because, oh my God, it's great that he's in a wheelchair and he's trying. It's more about focusing on the things that I can accomplish as a human, as an athlete, first and foremost, regardless of my differences physically. And I think that perception is definitely changing. But I think that all of us can agree that it's not where we want it to be. But it's all about kind of creating small victories each and every day, each and every month, each and every quad for the Paralympics, to just increase the awareness and create as many opportunities for people with disabilities as humanly possible.
Nikki, what about you?
I think the perception is changing. What I've noticed is the more that big companies and corporations buy into, and not even buy, that they know that it's not about the disability, but it's about the athlete, and then take the athlete on with sponsorships and promotions, the more that society changes. So like, I feel like now is the most that I've ever seen so many like, contract deals go out, and just even like my own teammate being an Adidas athlete, like that, for me, that's huge. So with that, it's like, okay, if the big companies are adding value to the athlete because they don't see them as a disabled athlete, but an athlete, and adding value to like their hard work and their efforts to get to where they are, then like me as a consumer, as a lover of sports, I'm going to look at the athlete differently, because now it's like, well, wait a minute, like I love this brand and they have all these great athletes, like they must think it's not inspirational that this athlete's working their tail off, you know what I mean? Like that's what's making me want to get out there to be better. So I feel like, just like Steve said, like we still have a long way to go, But the more that big corporations see us and accept us and promote us just like our counterparts or, you know, other Olympians, the better it'll be in the long run.
Awesome, thank you. I agree there. Francesco, did you have anything else to add?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I think the biggest thing is just raising awareness so people are, you know, can that can lead to all those other things. And I completely agree about the sponsorships, because I can tell you a lot of people I know, like I can tell them, yeah, I won gold at this event, or, you know, like other accomplishments. And they're just like, okay, cool, whatever. But you tell them you have one sponsorship deal, all of a sudden you're like, you know, oh my God, you're an awesome athlete, like crazy, you know? So it's, I think, unfortunately, or not unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, I think a lot goes along with that sort of, that established acceptance or recognition of, oh, he has a sponsor, which means, you know, that must equal something pretty big or pretty legit.
Definitely, I agree. Like, you see, I can imagine you can see people's like eyes light up when you tell them like, oh, one of your sponsors is Nike or Adidas or whatever. It just gives you a lot more value and credit to what you guys are trying to do. I know we're kind of up at the last couple of minutes here. So I really just wanted to kind of end it with this is, where do you guys see, first off, where do you guys want the Paralympic movement to go across the board? Like, are you guys happy where it is right now? What progress would you like to be seen? And then if there's anything else that you guys would like to add on to what we might not have touched about, that'd be great. Francesco, do you want to go first?
Yeah, awesome. So I like how the para world is being integrated with the non-para world. I think that adds legitimacy, whether it's from a sponsorship perspective or, you know, USOPC. I think the Tokyo Paralympics, Olympics, there's so much coverage within Japan, because I'm half Japanese, and like people are talking more about the Paralympics than they are Olympics. It's definitely getting there. And I think it's just a really cool thing to see the Paralympic world being raised up to that level.
Sorry, just a question for everyone. Did everyone hear that? Or with Francesco's...
Did I cut off?
Yeah, you cut off a little bit. Could you just repeat what you just said?
Yeah, the whole thing?
Yeah, please, that'd be great.
Sure. I think it's awesome. Can you? I'm sorry, I forgot.
No problem. So, where do you see the Paralympic movement going? Are you happy with where things are, the adaptive and Paralympic movement, and where would you like to see where?
Yeah, so I think in recent years and this year leading up to Tokyo, the Paralympic world, it's becoming more and more integrated with the Olympic world, which is awesome. Whether you have the USOPC, you know, integrating, and I'm half Japanese, so in Tokyo and Japan, they're talking more about the Paralympics, honestly, than they are about the Olympics, because they're just so excited about, you know, all the different categories in the power world, and that's something that we really haven't seen, I think. So I think the trajectory is going really well, and just continuing on that is awesome.
Definitely. Nikki?
I love how we're getting more coverage. Just the other day, like, our game was on primetime, like, hours. It was like 7, and they were playing our gold medal match. I was like, oh my God, like, what? So I wanted to see it continue in that light. I want us to be given the same opportunities that the Olympics are given. If you're giving the Olympics 36 million hours, I want the Paralympics to have 36 million hours, you know? I just want us to be looked at equally and be given the same opportunity. I understand that some things might look a little different because we are different, you know? But at the same extent, I just want equality. Just continue on the path that we're on to equality. That's it.
think that's a good way to summarize it up. Definitely equality, I think, is what we're all striving for sure. Steve, anything else?
Yeah, I mean, just to repeat that, equality is something that we're always striving for. I can tell you that each Paralympics, in terms of the coverage, in terms of the investment dollars from the USOPC, and in terms of sponsors, the Paralympics have been getting more and more equal to our Olympic counterparts, but we're nowhere near where it should be, and we're nowhere near where other countries are in terms of equality amongst Paralympians and Olympians. I think that one of the reasons why I look up to my fellow Team USA Paralympians right now is because we're all trying to use our platforms to build up how impactful Paralympics and adaptive sports can really be on not only us, but our entire community. When you talk about the awareness, it's not just from a high performance aspect, though. It's more about creating opportunities for people with disabilities at the local level in terms of community programs, in terms of school programs and stuff like that. So I think it's this all encompassing movement that is getting better and better each and every day. But we're nowhere near where we want to be, and we're going to continue to fight. We're going to continue to fight for our equal rights, and just excited to kind of be a part of it.
Great, thanks very much, Steve, and thanks everyone else. Nikki, Francesco. I know I went over a little bit, so thanks very much for hanging in there with me, and yeah, I really appreciate it. I'll let you guys know, since it's pre-recorded, I'll let you know the time, and it's going to be aired on the 26th on the Disability Unite webpage. Once I get a final time period, I'll let you guys know. I think we hit on a lot of great topics, and I feel like we could just keep on talking forever and ever. But yeah, thank you very much for everyone's time.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Paulie.
You got it,
Nice to
guys.
meet you guys.
You too.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
See you.
It's cool being viewed as art and not so much as a person. We're live art, and it's like Picasso painting a painting in real time.
Here I feel free to express myself and be creative.
I get to be myself.
Damn, how to feel upon myself and just relax and be me and be comfortable.
There's a sense of like group virtuosity happening organically.
Giving people the opportunity to do something that they never thought they could do is so empowering.
Made me realize how much people underestimate us, because I underestimated us.
I fall in love with my dancers. It's the only way I can work with them, and I fell in love with these guys, and they moved me, and They worked so hard and we had such a great time.
Hello, everybody. My name is Heidi Latsky. I go by the pronoun she, her, hers. I'm a white woman in my 60s with blonde, curlyish hair. I am wearing a striped t-shirt. What you just saw was an excerpt from our film, We Are Right Here, which was created. It's a documentary that was created about our program for people with spinal cord injuries that was supported by the Craig H. Nielsen Foundation. That film is, it's a short film. It's about 60 minutes long. And I have with me today some people who did participate in different ways, as well as some of my company members. Right after this panel, I know that in the next section, which is the performance platform, we will be showing our film Solo Flight, which is a new film that was developed during the lockdown, which we're very excited about. And today we're just going to talk about what the company is doing, what we have been doing, what our impact has been globally, and then what we're planning to do. And I can start with one of our biggest programs is On Display Global. And yesterday we did the very first virtual sculpture court or on display with people from all over the world participating. It is our social justice initiative on the UN's International Day of Persons with Disabilities every December 3rd. And we've been doing this since 2015, where we only had 2 sites. And now last year we had 78 sites, like in countries all over the world, like China, Indonesia, Israel, Korea, all throughout all the Americas. And this year, hopefully we'll be able to do it with 100 sites, even if we do it remotely. So that said, the panelists are going to introduce themselves, and then we're going to have a discussion. Tiff?
Hi, my name is Tiffany Gargle. I am a female, a Hispanic female, in my mid-30s. I have long brown hair, and I'm wearing a blue and green striped shirt. I go by the pronoun she, her, hers. And I've been a dancer with Heidi Latsky for about 5-6 years. And it's kind of great to see where the company is now from when I first started a few years back, from me just learning a few minutes of a solo to now being a part of On Display Global, to being a part of a hologram that we're working on. There's so many new things that the company's been doing, and it's really cool and interesting to be a part of it and to have a voice and to collaborate and work with all of that to show it out to the world.
Great.
Hi, I'm Louisa. She, her, hers. I am a white woman in her 30s. I have reddish brown hair and I'm wearing a white lacy t-shirt. I am the social media coordinator for Heidi Latsky Dance and also a company member. I started actually as an intern in 2015. When she was starting On Display. So it was really exciting to kind of be part of it from the beginning. And now to get to do the social media part and perform in it. It's really great to be able to kind of bridge those worlds and connect with people in those ways.
Nancy?
My name is Nancy. I identify as a she, her. I'm light-skinned, Caucasian. medium, light brown hair, and early 60s. My spinal cord injury is a C5-6, quadriplegic, incomplete. And I participated in the Heidi Latsky dance program because I felt I needed an outlet that would allow me the freedom to have rhythm, to be able to move in a way in which the spinal cord injury has hindered me from doing so. And being a part of the Heidi Latsky dance gave my body and my mind and my soul a whole different perspective from being an injured person to be a free person. The on-display global was even more dynamic in the sense that for the first time in a long time, I had control over my body. The injury takes away some of that. And now all of a sudden, her program gave me the power over myself and the power in a way to be still that was a very meaningful way. So all in all, the program has just benefited me in such a tremendous and impactful way that I'm truly grateful for.
Hi, I'm Peter. I am a mixed race man in his 30s. I am half Asian, half Caucasian, and I have a scruffy beard, slightly medium long hair. I'm wearing a gray shirt with buttons down the middle. I am a dancer with the company for the last 5 years. I think it's 5 years actually yesterday for the anniversary of the ADA, which is really cool. And I'm also the Accessibility and Technology Director. Last year, I helped the company develop an app which made all our performances accessible for the blind and the deaf, but also allowed us to show that accessibility to the non-disabled community, which is great. And then additionally, I also assisted Heidi on directing the program that Nancy just spoke about.
Right.
Hi, I'm Quimel Arroyo. I go by Q. I'm a Latino male in his early 30s. I have glasses and a thick beard and very curly hair. I use a wheelchair, so I'm sitting in my wheelchair. I'm a paraplegic, and I just love being part of the Heidi Latsky Dance family. I joined the company 5 years ago as a dancer for peace, looking for athletes to celebrate the 25th anniversary of the ADA. Since then, I've become an even deeper member of the family, now member of the board at Heidi Latsky Dance. And what I love most about dancing with this company and being a member is how Heidi brings out a dancer out of you. Really, through a collaborative process, understanding your tools, your assets, what you bring to the table, she's able to morph that, bake it all together, and make some beautiful pieces of work. And I just love that. We bring non-compliant bodies to the world of art and dance and deliver amazing, beautiful pieces that showcase our humanity.
Thank you. Wow. Yeah, when I think about where the company, like Tiffany said, where we were and where we are now, we're at another crossroads. You know, there's always been these crossroads that we've gotten to. You know, COVID is presenting a huge crossroads to overcome or to deal with. And one of the ways that I have been thinking about this, and I wanted your opinions on it too, is creating more films, because I do like creating films. They're crude because I'm using iMovie because I am not a filmmaker, really. But it's a way of choreographing for me, and it's a way of using your images and whatever you send me to make something, like Q said, hopefully beautiful. We're working with these holograms, which ideally will be in museums, but we're now making two-dimensional representations of them so that hopefully we can have venues online for them. And we're trying to build some interactive content as well. But we're looking, you know, obviously, like I'm not one of these choreographers who's shutting down the company. I know a lot of choreographers who have, not shutting down fully, but hibernating, so to speak, right? So figuring out what to do in this crisis. I like this idea of digital content and pushing boundaries so that what if we did on display global virtually? I mean, how cool would that be? And you had a whole day long where the sites, because there's all these time differences, right? Like where the sites can come and go onto our Zoom event all day would be, I think, a remarkable way to celebrate the International Day of Persons with Disabilities. So, I guess some of you have answered this already, but as Q, you and I were talking about, like, what do you see as, like, why is this company important to you? What do you see that we have brought to the world, and where do you see us going as well? And I'll just say one more thing. I know Peter wants to say something. Is that one of the things that has always been incredibly important to me, always, my whole life, is the beauty of integration, of inclusion, and the beauty actually of the individual and honoring each person. And so our Heidi Latsky dance world is really a lot now about the intersectionality of communities, right? And I think that's a really important distinguishing factor, is that I'm really interested, and we have been interested as a group in having, just a lot of different communities in terms of race, ethnicity, age, disability, non-disability, but all of these cross sections. So I will stop there.
I think what's really super fascinating about our company, or your company in essence, is that the ability of how we grow and how, honestly, we were already ahead of the curve. We've been working on these projects, these tech projects, before COVID. And so now it's really helpful because we're able to expand our audience, but help our audience. But when I look at my own trajectory in your company, I started in the same project as Q with the wheelchair athletes. And it was just supposed to be something for the summer. And then it kind of snowballed, and I became a dancer and on display. And then through that, you kind of trained me to dance more. And then I had this beautiful duet in Displayed. And, and at the same time, I became the Accessibility and Technology Director, which is something you've never done before. So we've kind of grown and worked in a way where it's sort of like we grow with the times, but we also, you give your dancers more of an option to grow with the company. And that's really great. When I see everyone on the screen, we've all participated in the company at one time or another in a different role. So it's really fascinating to see how Heidi Latsky Dance treats their dancers. And yeah, I think what the company brings, and as someone who was a fan of the company way before I joined the company, what has always intrigued me about the company is seeing someone with a disability like myself on stage. Because as a person with cerebral palsy, I'd never seen a dancer with cerebral palsy before seeing Heidi Latsky dance. The idea of dancing with cerebral palsy was an oxymoron to me. And I just didn't think it was something possible. So Heidi Latsky dance kind of opened my eyes to that possibility. Did I know that 10 years later I would be in the company? No, but it just opened my eyes to what I could do as a person with cerebral palsy, as someone in my young 20s and late teens when I first saw Heidi Latsky dance.
Great.
So for me, I think what's cool about these times is that we're getting deeper into the individuals. And you've seen that with some of the films that you've created recently, where people are filming themselves at home in their own space and bringing that footage together to make art, to make film, to make movies. And what sits at the very bottom of all of that is bringing the audience into the person's space, bringing the audience deeper into the dancer's persona. And we've always been doing that at Heidi Latsky Dance, and Heidi, you talk about this a lot, when we showcase our vulnerability. We make ourselves vulnerable with stillness. We make ourselves physically vulnerable with the virtuosity that you're always seeking and pushing out of us. And that's the beauty at Heidi Letsky Dances. You know, Heidi, you found the secret sauce to a beautiful dance piece, and it's when you force together virtuosity and vulnerability. And that's what I love from our pieces, and I love when I'm watching our pieces. And now that the dance space has moved into the individual's homes, that's all been heightened because you're so much more vulnerable, because it's no longer just about you and your movement, but it's also about you and your space. And now we, the audience, get an entry into that space.
Yeah.
Going off of that, I think even when all this started, especially in New York, like back in March and everything kind of shut down, being the person that's on our social media, I was like immediately, okay, how can we stay connected and what are other people doing? And there's all of a sudden all these virtual classes, which is actually amazing because now, even though we're in New York, we can have class with people who are in California, or we can do an on display with people that are on the other side of the world and kind of show it in this new way. So even though we're kind of going through this crisis and we're at this crossroads, I think there's like some really beautiful things that can come out of it.
One of the interesting things I found is the authenticity of ourselves. Often because of our injury or of our situation, we want to hide it. We want to keep it at bay. And here the Heidi Letsky dance enables you to not hide it, but bring it out. Expose yourself. Let yourself be seen as you really are in a way that's a very powerful and meaningful way that others can look at it and observe it and see it and actually admire it. And admire not only the fact of what you're doing, but what you're capable of doing, in their minds thinking that that's not possible. So what we're doing is educating the viewers to see that a disability or an ailment is not something that limits you, but actually can enforce or enhance everything that you didn't know before. So I think it's a dynamic opportunity that, as we were just saying, you don't just keep it local, but you can keep it worldwide. And it gives a universal hope.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that on display shows the world, hopefully, that we don't apologize for who we are. I remember when I first met you, I think I was walking with you somewhere in Hell's Kitchen, and I kept dropping stuff because that's who I am, and I kept saying sorry, and you like looked at me and you said, stop saying sorry. And I think that that's what on display is. It's like, no, I'm not sorry. I don't feel bad for myself. This is who I am.
Well, I'll interject for a second. That's beautiful sentiment. I think the beauty of on display is that it is really hard to do.
Yeah.
Because I don't think we think we're so hot. Do you know what I mean? I don't know anyone who is so confident that they can just be a sculptor and not be self-conscious in any way. And that's the fierceness I'm looking for and the vulnerability, because it's more like I have all these insecurities. I do. I've been dancing for so long. I'm getting nervous. I feel exposed, but yet I'm doing it anyway. And that to me is the empowering part. And I just want to say something in case I don't remember if we said it already, but the beautiful thing about being here today on the anniversary, the 30th anniversary of the ADA, is that all this started on the 25th anniversary of the ADA when Victor Calisi asked me to do kind of like guerrilla art throughout the city during July for the celebration of the 25th anniversary. And that is when On Display began. So it's kind of remarkable. I mean, it's really wonderful to be part of this celebration, since a whole big body of work was initiated during the 25th anniversary. Tiffany, did you have something to say?
Yes.
Yes, I thought so.
Right, and just to to stem from you, it started off as maybe like a one-time thing, or who knew what it was going to be, and it was just centralized in the city for New York City, and now it's worldwide. I mean, we've taken this thing global, which is kind of fascinating. But another thing that I also like about it is the fact that it stirs up conversation. And that, for me, that's a big deal. We need to have these conversations in order to educate everybody, even children. I like the fact that sometimes we bring it to children. We have brought it to children in another form, and it's a nice dialogue between us and them, and it's just something to stir up the conversations. Who knows how many conversations people have talked about after they've seen the show for days or weeks on, and who knows what that has done to a certain group of people, how maybe their minds have opened or their life has changed, or they've taken a certain step differently now because of what they saw from us. We don't know the impact it does, but I'm pretty sure it's pretty big. And I know it could get way bigger, especially now during COVID. Like, everybody is Zooming everything or FaceTiming everything. We're now literally living virtually because we don't have the choice. And On Display Global was already kind of virtual to begin with, and we're just expanding it even more, which now's the time for the conversation. And I think it is now that people are talking about it way more than before.
And I think what's beautiful about your company and On Display is, unlike any other physically integrated dance company in the country right now, you are On Display allows you to take the uniqueness of the person, disabled or non-disabled, and really put that out there. And, we're not hiding behind some sort of technique or like being in unison. It's us. And that's something that I think the world has lost in like the recent years of like everyone wants to be uniform, everyone wants to fit in. And I think the beauty of On Display shows us by showing that we don't fit in, we are better or we are happier. Because I can say that when I look at my own trajectory with the company and through On Display, I can say that On Display has done so much for me in how I view myself. And I can see in the audience members, the conversations I have after the audience, how, whether I know them or not personally, how they view disability differently. Because they never thought that something like that could be done. And I think they get a really good look. And I think the great thing about On Display is it encourages someone to stare. And that's not something that is ever given to us as people with disabilities or people who look different. And
I think, sorry, I don't want to interrupt.
No, I'm just going to say that, like, I think that, as someone who grew up with a disability, I've always spent my entire life stared at. And I think the beauty of On Display was it gave me that power back. It said, no, you're going to stare at me, but you're going to stare at me and really look at me. You're not going to make preconceived notions about me, because you're going to stare at me and I'm going to show you who I am.
I think maybe you guys don't know this, but I did a keynote yesterday where I was talking about the trajectory of my career. And I talked about my first inclination to start these site-specific works, the installations, was that I was really getting tired of preaching to the converted. Like, all the people that would buy tickets to come to see GIMP or IF or any of these works that I'm making were people who supported kind of this kind of work already. And I wanted more people to be exposed to what I saw, what I was seeing as so incredibly beautiful, like this juxtaposition of lots of different people. And so creating a film, when I was commissioned to make Soliloquy, that was the beginning of wanting to make film, because that broadens your audience. And I love the film for the program you guys were in. The SCI program is just so beautiful. And I hope it gets out there a lot. And then these site-specific works, the public happens on them. They have no choice, right? They can choose to either stay there when we're on the High Line or in Times Square. You know, you're getting people walking by. They're either going to stop and look, or they're going to think, oh, this is weird. I don't know what this is, and keep going. Or people take pictures all the time. It's one of the most photographed, I think, pieces definitely we've ever done. But I love that it's out in the public, because you're right, Peter. It's a way for the public, the general public, if they choose to look, to experience something that they maybe never have experienced. Did you want to say something, Q? I thought you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I did. I wanted to follow up on what Tiffany was talking about, and you're talking about it now too, about that experience that On Display allows the viewer. And, you know, we've seen many things happen at On Display performances. We've seen people cry for hours. We've seen little kids stare and laugh, and we've seen people mimic dancers and try to copy their moves. But, you know, to Peter's point, and, you know, we've said this a lot, you know, On Display is taking power back and, you know, identifying who you are for the gawker, you know, for telling that viewer, yeah, this is me, but I'm going to show you the real me in a very visceral, raw, and vulnerable way, which really, I think, especially now in the time of COVID, where we've been forced inside, into our homes, into our lives, we are really thinking about, you know, what is our lives? Who are we? And that's what we show with On Display. And with many of our pieces, we really force the audience to immerse themselves into who they are. And that's reflected in how they experience our pieces. And that's why we see so many broad experiences and interactions with the public when they come upon us. And I think we need more things that make us question who we are and what we're about. And that's exactly what we do.
I mean, and I think On Display Global, I really hope we can push it forward, because especially like this last, October, Tiffany, Louise, and I went to Armenia, and it was really fascinating. We did Displayed, which came out of On Display Better. It's a 15 or 16-person sculpture court that erupts into movement. It's done in the round, and the audience can sit on stage with us, essentially, or in the staging area. And I think what was really interesting doing in Armenia, where we were told that they hadn't had experience with disability before. I can tell you, as a disabled person, the theater wasn't accessible, like streets weren't very accessible. The same visibility here. I can tell based off the series we were in how the audience reacted to our show. There was like complete silence. You could hear a pin drop. And at the beginning of the show, the audience can walk around us and within the sculpture staging area. And I remember, and I think Tiffany and Louisa remember this too, there was this little kid, he must have been 5 or 6, and he was jumping around in front of each of us and taking pictures of us with his phone or his parents' phones. And it was like really hard to stay still, because he would do it in a way where he wanted to startle you, or he didn't mean to, but it was just like, you know, he was taking pictures. And I really think this is a piece made for the time, because like you said, there are a lot of pictures being taken. They are being shared on social media. And I think representation for disability has changed within the last 5 years. And I'm excited to see what's going to happen in 5 or 10 more years, or even on the 50th anniversary of the ADA.
And so, I think, sorry.
No, I think that this piece was made for the time, in that
Which piece?
Displayed On Display Global, our current offering, because it's something that you can put online easily. You can social distance, unfortunately now with COVID, but it's something that can be done in parts, and there's technology that makes it more accessible online. And I think we really were ahead of the curve. None of us could have anticipated this happening, but I think that what we can offer.
Yeah, the only thing that's sad to me is that Displayed, which the hologram was supposed to be part of, and has audio enhancement by Google. The Google's Creative Lab in Sydney, Australia, created like this whole experience with audio enhancement. And that is my baby. And that to me has everything in it, because a lot of people, when you see on display and everyone is very still, it's cold. It's not a warm, emotional piece. It's cold. I think it's beautiful. And what some people don't understand is that it is an endurance. It's a feat of endurance, because it is very hard to be still and that focused with your eyes open. And then to not inhibit movement is as harder than actually letting your body go. And then to have that within displayed, which then has the opposite of all this physical, athletic movement where you're all dancing, all 17 of you, or whatever, are dancing together. And it's extremely athletic and dynamic. And then to me, that juxtaposition brings the audience so in. Sorry, I've seen the audience really become emotionally involved in displayed in a way that they're not with on display. And that's the work that's going to have to wait, because there is no way we can do that with social distancing unless all of us were wearing masks and the audience can't go through us because of all the rigor of the athleticism. And so I hope, this is my prayer for the future, is that we will be able to do displayed when the time is right, when it becomes safe to do it. I do think we can do on display. You're right, Peter. We can do that. We can do aspects, of solo flight, where your solos that you've done or material that we've all created can be performed in isolated spaces. But that's kind of my dream. And I just want to thank you, because we have to stop. This has been great. So I want to thank each and every one of you for being here. I want to thank the festival for inviting us to do this and sharing our experiences and the work that we, obviously all of you and me, I believe in. And hopefully we will move forward without too much of a glitch. But that, it's a very uncertain future for everyone.